Annyeonghaseyo, greetings, ninth graders. It seems like distance learning is going well. I got a lot of one-pagers from almost everyone. So great work. So before we get into today's lesson, I did want to touch base about one-pagers. So for the one-pagers, please make sure that you have both text and writing. Some people just submitted a bunch of pictures about the coronavirus, which, it's a good start, but also I want to see some writing as well. In addition, make sure your one-pager fills up an entire page. The whole purpose of a one-pager is to just show me like what you know. So when you do your one-pager, I don't want you to spend a whole lot of time researching the topic online. Just show me what you know. If you don't know a ton, that's fine. This student, she did a great job with her one-pager. I think it looks terrific. However, you can tell that she just spent a long time looking online for good information about how to keep your immune system healthy and how to wash your hands and so on and so forth. So anyways, please just show me what you know off the top of your head. You don't have to do extra research. Your one-pager should take you about 15 to 20 minutes. This other student, she did a fantastic job on her one-pager. It's what I would like to see when I ask for a one-pager from you. So she's got great illustrations, very simple explanations, and this basically shows us what she knows. This student, she had her one-pager, and let me get my highlighter pen here going. She had her one-pager kind of tucked into the corner of her notes, and it's one picture and one explanation. So this is a really good start to a one-pager, but for a one-pager, I do want you to fill up one whole page, and that's why it's called a one-pager. So next, let's talk about our entrance task. For our entrance task, I'd like you to draw a diagram of a virus. We talked about the structure of a virus in our last class, so hopefully this is not totally new information for you. In the middle of the virus, we have this bundle of twisty, turny stuff, which is genetic material. It's either DNA or RNA. And then on the outside of that, this yellow stuff here is the protein coat. And those are basically the two fundamental elements of a virus. However, this diagram has a few other things, and I'll go ahead and explain. The next thing that we have in our diagram is this green layer here, which is labeled as the envelope. Now, this is not just the envelope, this is a lipid envelope. And the word lipid just means fat. Fats and oils, if you know anything about them, they do not really have a good relationship with water. So water and oil do not mix. And so if you have this envelope of oil on the outside of the virus, then it prevents water from getting into the virus. And so when you wash your hands, basically you're destroying that protective oily layer on the outside of a virus, and that makes the virus much, much more easy to destroy. Finally, we have these receptors on the outside of the virus, and these receptors, they sort of camouflage the virus. They trick a cell into thinking that this virus is a chemical messenger, so the cell welcomes in the virus, and that's how the virus takes over. Okay, my apologies for the change of venue. There was a little bit of noise in the other room, so I decided to move to a place that was a little quieter. Nonetheless, our objectives for today: content. I want you to be able to understand how the coronavirus affects people. And for our language objective, I want you to be able to explain the dangers of the coronavirus. For our keywords, our first keyword is exponential. Mr. O did a great job of explaining this concept to you in our last PowerPoint. So things that expand or grow exponentially, they grow explosively. So if you think of exponential, think of it as explosive growth. Our next term is contagious. Contagious is something that's passed very quickly from one person to another. It spreads very quickly from people. This is not only used for terrible things like viruses, but some people say that laughter can be contagious. I don't know, maybe sometime during class, one of your classmates starts laughing and everyone starts laughing. Laughing can also be contagious. White blood cells. This should be a review item for all of you. White blood cells are the part of your blood which sort of defends against bacteria and viruses. They kill bacteria and viruses. They help defend your body against disease and infection. Alveoli. Alveoli are the air sacs in your lungs where gas exchange happens. So when you breathe in, the air goes into your lungs, it branches off through all these bronchioles, and eventually it ends up in a place called alveoli. And at the alveoli, oxygen goes into your blood and carbon dioxide goes out of your blood. Our final vocabulary term is pneumonia. I know it looks like pneumonia. I think it's a Greek word. That's why they got that silent P in there. Anyways, you don't pronounce the P. It's pronounced pneumonia. Pneumonia is a bacterial infection of your lungs. And when you get pneumonia, your body ends up producing fluid in your lungs. And that fluid builds up in your lungs. It builds up inside of your alveoli, and it makes it difficult to breathe. So people who die of pneumonia end up dying because they're not getting enough oxygen. So during our last class, we talked about what happens inside of one of your cells when it gets infected by a virus. And I showed you this picture of a bacteria being infected by a virus and filling up with a virus. So anyways, while this is happening inside of your body, you are very contagious. Okay, you can spread the coronavirus to other people. However, you might not even feel sick. So people infected with the coronavirus, they oftentimes don't feel sick between 5 until 14 days. So during that time, between 5 and 14 days, they can get lots of people sick because they're just going about their everyday lives. They're meeting people, shaking hands, sharing food, touching things, passing it to other people, coughing, sneezing, but because they don't feel sick, they think that everything is okay. And that's the reason why the coronavirus spreads so quickly. The flu, for example, you start feeling those symptoms between like 1 to 3 days after you get it. So you have a smaller window where you're contagious and you can spread it around. But with the coronavirus, that window of contagiousness is very large. And so it's very easy for this virus to spread. So they say that the average coronavirus victim infects 2.5 people. I would say that number is probably not really solid because we are, we're still unclear about the numbers of people with a coronavirus infection, especially in the United States. The United States has a dearth of tests. There are not enough tests, so they just really can't, they really don't know how many people have the coronavirus in the US. However, based on some statistics from other countries like China and South Korea, they say on average, a typical person infected with the coronavirus will infect 2.5 people. Another thing that I want to mention that complicates this infection rate is the fact that some people are asymptomatic. Asymptomatic means that they have the virus, they're sick, but they don't have any symptoms. There's no runny nose, no coughing, no sneezing, they don't feel feverish, they don't have a headache. They feel just fine. But in fact, they do have the virus and they are spreading the virus even though they never get any of the symptoms or they never really get sick. So because of that, it makes it more difficult to figure out who does and doesn't have the virus, because people who don't have symptoms, they of course are not going to get tested for the coronavirus. Here we have just a quick set of numbers showing that coronavirus can go from 1 person to 2.5 to 6 to 16 to 40 to 100, so on and so forth. So if it spreads to the average of 2.5 people, can very quickly ramp up in numbers. And that's exactly what we've seen not only in the United States, but also in China, South Korea. Italy is going crazy right now. Spain is getting hammered by the coronavirus as well because it's spreading so quickly. Here we have just a little video of one single bacteria which splits into 2, and those 2 split into 4, and then we have 8, and this is exponential reproduction. At first you have a little dot, and then soon these bacteria are filling the entire screen. Next, let's talk about the coronavirus itself. The name coronavirus, sorry, I'm just getting a little too comfortable at home. I'm at home, So anyways, the name coronavirus officially is known as COVID-19, which stands for Coronavirus Disease 2019. It's also a form of SARS, which is, if I'm recalling correctly, Sudden Acute Respiratory Syndrome. And so another name for it is SARS coronavirus 2. because there was another incidence of the SARS spreading in the United States. I want to say that was maybe like 5 years ago. There was a big scare about SARS that happened about 5 years ago. Now, people think that the coronavirus got started in the Wuhan wet markets. The Wuhan wet markets are basically like exotic wild animal markets where they sell wild animals for people to eat. And these wild animals are typically not eaten by poor people, but they're actually eaten by rich people. So they bring like lots of exotic animals from different places. Lots of these rich people think that some of these animals will have special medicinal properties. But anyways, because the animals are sort of stacked on top of each other in this wet market, and if we look in this picture, we see, I don't even know what this is. It looks like a marmot or a groundhog. It's some kind of rodent. We see some kind of rodent sitting on top of some kind of deer. And so what ends up happening is this rodent, it like poops, it pees, it coughs, whatever. And if it's got some kind of disease, it's very easy for that disease to jump from one animal to the next. And also, if people are buying these animals in the wet market, they kill the animals on the spot. And so what will end up happening is there's just a lot of blood and fluids all around. It's not a very sanitary place. And so what ends up happening is that diseases jump from animal to animal. So people believe that the coronavirus got its start from bats, but it didn't go directly from bats to human. They feel like that there was some sort of intermediate host in between bats and humans. Lots of people believe that the host was this sort of cute, furry anteater called a pangolin, and it's possible. There's a lot of debate about it between scientists these days. But nonetheless, went from bats to some kind of intermediate animal, and then it ended up in humans. And they've sort of were able to track the progression of this virus to one specific wet market in Wuhan. The first cases were linked to this market, and then it spread from that market to people who had contact with people in the market, and so on and so forth. So let's talk about how the coronavirus affects your body. Now, the coronavirus targets your lungs. So it targets your lungs. Specifically, it targets the tissues on the surface of your lungs, your epithelial tissues. And so these epithelial tissues are super important because they, number one, produce mucus. And mucus serves as kind of a barrier between your lungs and the outside world. When viruses or bacteria go into your body, a lot of times they get trapped in this mucus, and then your white blood cells can kill them, or this mucus can just get expelled from your body. In addition, these epithelial tissues line your alveoli. And so the epithelial tissues are the place where gas exchange happens. So oxygen goes in, carbon dioxide goes out at these epithelial tissues. However, epithelial tissues are the exact place where coronavirus targets. And especially the alveoli are affected by the coronavirus. So the coronavirus, when you get it, you'll typically have a variety of symptoms that are kind of like the flu. So to begin with, you'll have things like runny nose, cough, fever, sore throat, muscle soreness. So it's really difficult for people to tell whether or not they have the coronavirus or just like a really bad flu. However, there is one symptom of the coronavirus that is different than the flu, and this doesn't happen in all people, but loss of smell and taste. Now, I'll apologize because I'm going to go off on a little tangent, but it's pretty interesting because we believe that the woman across the street from us got the coronavirus. She had a terrible flu, which just really wrecked her for probably a good week. And when she was talking about what had happened to her, she said that she's also a young mother. She's got a baby, 1 year old, about the same age as Suna. But anyway, she was saying like, oh, my baby's diapers were always poopy, but I didn't notice because I couldn't smell anything. And so people who have this particular symptom along with flu-like symptoms will often think that probably they have the coronavirus, because typically when you get the flu, you don't lose your sense of taste or sense of smell. So let's talk about what the coronavirus does to people who have a serious infection. As you know, coronavirus goes after the epithelial tissue in your lungs, so it does direct damage to your lung tissue. In addition to that, it does indirect damage to your lungs. And the way it does this is that it overstimulates your immune system. So typically your white blood cells, they'll kill things like viruses and bacteria. What the coronavirus does, it sort of overstimulates these white blood cells, and these white blood cells end up going after healthy lung tissue. So you have damage in your lungs from the coronavirus, and you also get damage in your lungs from white blood cells. Now, Donald Trump has recently talked about an experimental drug called hydrochloroquine. And hydrochloroquine is typically used to treat 3 different diseases, one being malaria. Malaria is like this jungle disease that you get from mosquitoes. But the other 2 diseases, the other 2 diseases are lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. So rheumatoid arthritis, some of you might be familiar with it because it's a very common disease. Older people get it, like really old people get it, and it happens when like the joints on their hands sort of swell up. They can get it in their elbows, their knees, their shoulder, but anyways, their joints swell up. It's really difficult and painful to move those joints. What ends up happening is that your white blood cells begin attacking the soft tissue in your joints. So it'll attack like cartilage, ligaments, tendons, and that causes the joint swelling, which in turn is what the arthritis is. So hydrochloroquine causes your immune system to sort of calm down. It sort of brings it down a notch. And so while coronavirus makes your immune system overreact, hydrochloroquine kind of causes it to relax a little bit. And so this drug is still experimental. They're not really sure whether or not it's going to make a difference for coronavirus patients, but let's keep our hopes up. Next, people who have the coronavirus and who have serious infections, the number of white blood cells goes down precipitously. It goes down tremendously as they're fighting off this infection. And so because their white blood cell count is low, and because the epithelial tissues in their lungs are damaged, and let me explain this a little bit more. Their epithelial tissues are the tissues that produce mucus. And this mucus typically serves as a barrier between your lungs and viruses and bacteria, especially things like pneumonia. And so you don't have white blood cells to fight off bacteria. You don't have mucus to help protect your body, and so lots of people who have coronavirus end up getting pneumonia. And so it's a combination of coronavirus and pneumonia which ends up killing people. People have this fluid that builds up in their lungs. They've got a bacterial infection in their lungs along with the coronavirus, and they have a combination of this fluid and blood, which ultimately ends up causing them to drown. Oh my goodness, that's a terribly depressing way to end this lecture. Let me try to reassure you though. Number one, I will say that the infection or the fatality rate for the coronavirus is somewhere between 1 and 3%. In addition to that, people who are younger, like typically teenagers, they have a much lower fatality rate. Usually coronavirus really impacts older people the worst. So as you get older, the fatality rate gets much higher. As you get younger, the fatality rate gets much lower. So that 1 to 3% is an average of everyone. So for younger people, it's probably not as high. In saying that, though, I'm not encouraging you to engage in unsafe behavior or do things that are thoughtless. Some of the best advice that I heard for the coronavirus is that we should behave as if we are infected, and we should behave as if everyone else is also infected. I think if you try to think about your daily life, your daily interactions, in that way you can maximize your safety. So for homework, I would like you to send a picture of your virus diagram to sjkwok@sejongacademy.org, or you can upload your photo to Schoology as well. In addition, if you have any questions about our lecture or science, even if it's not related to coronavirus or environmental justice, just hit me up during office hours between 9:30 a.m., 10:30 a.m. Usually I'm just hanging out by myself. I would like to see you. I'd like to talk to you. So yeah, just join for office hours. The link is in Schoology. Thank you, and yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.